My husband and I discovered More Mesa about 2 years ago, even though we've lived here for 52 years. So we like to walk, we like to hike, and we had done several walks that week, and I said, I don't want to go there again. No, I don't want to go there again. So I said, hey, there's this place called More Mesa, and we've never been. I have no idea where it is. So hello, internet, and I found it. And we went for a hike on More Mesa and absolutely loved it. And I became a fan. So I took a land trust trek there, and then I was so impressed. And then I attended the celebration for the easement that the county gave for More Mesa. So I became an advocate. And I also became curious about the history of More Mesa. So that's what this is about. I'm not going to talk to you about birds and bees because I don't know anything about them. And we're going to just talk about the history tonight, and I hope you enjoy it. So here we go. There are many aspects to the remains of the More Ranch, and today we're going to explore its history. To do so, a quick review of the situations and events leading up to the arrival of the More family in Santa Barbara might be in order. So here, let's begin with that. In the beginning, before the advent of the Spanish and for thousands of years, the area near the Goleta Slough supported several Chumash villages. These clans used the asphaltum oozing from the cliffs to caulk their tumals and for other purposes. Meanwhile, in the latter part of the 1700s, King Carlos III of Spain ordered the exploration and settlement of California. At the time, it had become clear that Russia and Great Britain were poised to challenge Spain's claim to the lands. Spain had laid a claim to California in 1542 with the voyage of Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, but Carlos, unlike his predecessors, did not want to conquer California. He was considered to be enlightened. According to his edict, all of the lands of California were to be held in trust for the native population. This would occur once they were Christianized, had been taught farming and other practical skills. King Carlos figured it would take, about 10 years, and then this course of study would have taken effect. The lands could then be parceled out to individual families. Spanish citizens, however, could not own land. Carlos's order, Mexico sent the Portola expedition to California. It reached Santa Barbara on August 18th of 1769. And along the way, they took note of the native tribes and they scouted for locations for the missions. This painting actually shows them at a later date discovering San Francisco Bay. Oh, please work. The first settlement of the Santa Barbara area came with the Presidio in 1782. The first commander of the Presidio was a man named Jose Francisco de Ortega, who had passed through Santa Barbara with the Portola expedition in 1769. He was the Presidio commandant for possibly 2 years before he was sent to other posts. He would return to Santa Barbara in 1791, however, destitute and in debt. The tiled panel on the left shows Ortega and commemorates his time in Santa Barbara. The cover of the book shows the Santa Barbara Presidio in our landscape. It was taken from a painting by Russell A. Ruiz. The mission was established in 1786, 4 years later, and the process of conversion to Christianity began. It wouldn't be until 1820, however, that the mission as we know it today was built. This image comes from Walker Tompkins' Santa Barbara Past and Present and is also illustrated by Russell A. Ruiz. Since the land was reserved for the native population, Spanish citizens could only apply to use the land and for only 10 years. When Captain Ortega returned to Santa Barbara in 1791, he applied for one of these Spanish land grants, and though the priests at the mission objected, he was successful in establishing an Ortega rancho up on the Gaviota coast. It was far away from those meddling priests and the legal authority of the Presidio. He planned to build a ranch and raise cattle to pay off his debts. When ranching didn't prove to be particularly profitable, he decided he was going to break the Spanish mercantile laws. These laws, like those of England, required that the colonies buy and sell only to the home country. Foreign ships sailed into Refugio Bay and sold goods that the people of Santa Barbara wanted to buy, things like silk and furnishings and luxuries, as well as some staples. Soon after, Mexico won its war for independence from Spain in 1822, the Mexican government appropriated all of the mission lands, leaving the missions without a source of income or sustenance. Many fell into disrepair. In this photo, the adobe buildings in the foreground are already showing signs of dilapidation. Unlike others, Santa Barbara's mission would be saved by two men who had married into the old Spanish families, Daniel Hill and Nicholas Den. Though by 1823 foreign ships could legally enter the harbor of Santa Barbara, many continued to do a brisk business up in Refugio as well. That year, 27-year-old Daniel Hill of Boston, first mate of the Rover, anchored at Refugio Bay. He visited the Ortega hacienda and was immediately smitten by the Ortega's 14-year-old daughter, Rafaela. And so he jumped ship. Daniel was a skilled carpenter and stonemason, and he headed down to Santa Barbara to find work. And while he waited for Rafaela to reach the age of consent, he worked as a major domo at the mission. And he built adobes with wooden floors and was generally a jack of all trades. He learned Spanish and converted to Catholicism. They married and had a passel of kids, the number of which, for some reason, is disputed by most historians, and I am not going to make a guess at why. Okay, so Hill built an adobe home with a wooden floor for his bride on today's Carrillo Street. It still stands today. It's much altered in its preservation. Notice the wooden shingles above the porch. This was standard technique at that time, as the tiles were only needed to protect the interior. After several years and several kids, Rafaela wanted to be closer to her family. So they moved to an Ortega family adobe in Tahiguas Canyon, and Daniel enlarged the adobe, remodeled it, added onto it, and of course put in a wooden floor. Seen here in 1923, the left wing of the house is the remodeled adobe. When the property was sold that year in 1923, the new owner hired George Washington Smith to build an adobe home there. They tried to save the old adobe house, which you can see in the background, but it was structurally unstable, so they created more bricks and used whatever bricks they could save from the original. But let's go back to the 1830s. After Mexican independence had been won, the Mexican government began granting the former mission lands to prominent Mexican citizens. By 1846, the lands of Santa Barbara County were divided up pretty much like this. In 1846, Daniel Hill, at the prodding of his son-in-law, Nicholas Den, finally applied for and received a Mexican land grant, which he named La Goleta. With the sabers of war with the United States rattling, it became really clear that this was going to be the final opportunity to do so. The grant was comprised of 4,426 acres. And now I'm going to try to do this. Hold on. Okay. And La Goleta is right here. And you can see how much smaller it is than most of the other ranchos that were being granted to the Spanish citizens, the former Spanish citizens. Okay. This section of the Google map is roughly the extent of his original grant. It seems to go from the ocean up to the base of the foothills and along, I believe, Fairview Avenue, and its border is with the Hope Ranch area, which was Las Pasitas y Calera. And I can show you that if I can figure out how to make this work again. And here is the border with Hope Ranch. It's hard to make a straight line when you don't have a pencil. And More Mesa Open Space is right here. So here we are, a couple of millennia and 80 years and 16 slides later, and T. Wallace Moore and two of his 5 brothers from Ohio finally enter California, and they are there to win a fortune. The United States had gone to war with Mexico in 1846, as promised, over a boundary dispute with Texas, and won the war in 1848. Almost immediately, gold was discovered in the foothills of the Sierras, and a great influx of prospectors from around the world rushed to California. The Moore brothers also rushed off to the gold fields, not with pick and shovel, but with cattle. They purchased cattle in Southern California and drove the herds to the northern mines where they were sold at an enormous profit. This famous painting, Sunday Afternoon at the Mines, gives you a sense of what they encountered. As rough and tumbling as the mining camps were, the miners were buying beef at $10 a pound, which would be $420 today, and eggs were going for $3 a piece, which translates to $120 each today. One of the first purchases they made with their newfound riches was the Sespe land grant, to which they quickly added the Santa Paula and Satacoy, as well as Rancho Cumulas, and other properties along the Santa Clara River. Later, several other properties came under the Moore family control and ownership as well. This includes Santa Rosa Island and Rancho Tehiguas. So, what you see here, this is the Sespe River, and this is supposed to be in red, and I'll change it in a minute. And then this is the Santa Clara River, which didn't go where my line did, but you can see it. You can see it regardless. And this is actually the land grant map at the time. It's in our collection here at Santa Barbara Historical Museum. There we go. Okay, during this time, T. Wallace made contact and did business in Santa Barbara as well. And in 1853, he married Daniel Hill's daughter, Susanna. He also started an asphaltum business on the western side of Hill's Rancho and purchased 420 acres of the land. The photo shows the area today, and I'm going to switch my color to red so you can actually see it. And there we go. So here we go. This is obviously, you recognize Goleta Beach, the sandbar that is the state park today, I believe. And then we have the pier, and right behind it, right in here, is More Mesa. In fact, that's the whole Moore Ranch, starting probably from this side all the way to here. Okay. Daniel Hill had not had his rancho for many years when one disaster after another struck. It all started on June 17th, 1859. The day started out extremely warm, but when a simoon wind arose, the temperature soared to 133 degrees. Birds dropped from the sky and crops were scorched. Many cattle and other animals perished. The following year, months of rain caused disastrous flooding, which drowned most of his cattle. The final straw came in 1864, when a drought killed off even more of his cattle, and a plague of grasshoppers ate his sparse crops. He was in great debt to Joaquin Carrillo and in danger of losing his entire ranch. T. Wallace Moore paid 5 times, bought 1,000 acres at 5 times what it was worth to help defer the debt. What T. Wallace later bought another 1,000 acres from his father-in-law. Meanwhile, the demand for T. Wallace Moore's asphaltum was increasing, so in addition to running a ranch, he was selling asphaltum to San Francisco. He once commented that the time it took for the asphalt to replenish itself, remember it's oozing out of the cliffs here, was about the same time as it took between beard trimmings, about 3 months. So he knew that when his beard needed to be trimmed, then it was time to mine the asphaltum again. The slide shows a bird's eye view of San Francisco around this time. San Francisco was the primary market for his asphaltum because it was growing exponentially. In 1873, the demand for asphaltum was so great that he constructed a wharf built of strong Oregon piles and redwood pile fenders. He then added a wharfage business to his repertoire. Goleta farmers would pay a fee, but it was much closer and much easier to go to Moore's Landing than down to Santa Barbara, where they also had to pay a fee. In 1877, 78, and 81, storms and high surf, of course, wrecked the pier, and major repairs were required. In 1889, it was completely rebuilt by T. Wallace's brother, John Finley Moore. The photo shows the pier in 1901. It would lose another 150 feet in 1908, and it was located, for those of you who live in the area, near the end of Anderson Lane, from what I've been able to figure out. Meanwhile, the Hill family continued selling off pieces of land grant. This ad is for 5-acre lots, and it touted them as being near school, church, and Moore's Landing. From the moment he acquired the Sespe Ranch, T. Wallace Moore was beset with boundary disputes between homesteaders who had settled on what they thought was government land and what T. Wallace considered to be part of his ranch boundary. He used the law and then resorted to force to try to evict the squatters. He burned their barns and houses and turned their cattle loose. One night in 1877, a band of 5 hooded men came down to his ranch and set fire to his barn. As he rushed out barefoot in his night clothes to save the horses and tack, he was shot down. As he lay dying, all 5 men blasted away at his head, nearly obliterating it. It was murder, and it was most foul. In the years of trials that followed, only 1 man was convicted and later had his sentence commuted by the governor of California. After Moore's death, his brother, John Finley Moore, bought out the rest of the Moore heirs and took over the ranch. He renewed the wharfage arrangement. John Finley Moore was liked by some and not so much by others in Goleta. In 1887, he donated 5 of the acres needed to build the rail depot. He allowed people to use the beach at Moore's Landing and even built a changing room at the head of the pier. And the photo shows John Sexton, another Goleta pioneer, with John Finley Moore. Finley did some very nice things for Goleta, but he was impatient with others and once took out rows of beautiful poplar trees lining the Goleta Road in front of his property. He said T. Wallace had planted them years ago and they were now injuring the ranch, so he wanted to replace them with palm trees. The county sued him, saying they were in charge of the trees, he didn't have the right to do it, and the county won the suit. But there was no penalty for Moore, and the trees were gone, so he got what he wanted. The photo is of the old Goleta Road with its alley of trees, which is Hollister Avenue, in case you didn't know that. Anyways, Walker Tompkins published an article about John Moore's ranch and included an 1895 photo of the ranch complex. John Moore had hired then-famous architect Peter Barber, who was responsible for a lot of the Victorians in town, to design this house. Tompkins says this view is looking east and shows the Hope Ranch in the background. And consequently, today's More Ranch Open Space, I'm not quite sure, so I can't even point it out. Over the years, the ranch would raise a great variety of crops. In 1877, the principal crops were beans, corn, hay, squashes, and grain, but later they added lemon and walnut orchards, and they even tried growing tobacco for a time. And the ranch, of course, also had cattle, sheep, and pigs. Moore's Landing hadn't just provided a place for trade and shipping. It was adopted by the people of Goleta as a recreation spot as early as 1877. And I love this little article. I'm going to read it to you. Our people at Goleta are extremely neat and cleanly. Okay, they spend the most of their idle time in the surf this warm weather. We noticed 60 in at one time on Saturday, and not a good day for bathing either. We think our beach, Moore's Landing, is without exception the best on the coast for bathing. If anyone doubts it, let him come and try it. So let's do that. Let's try it. The Parrott family of San Francisco hosted a beach party at Moore's Landing in 1901. So let's go with them. It will be necessary to bring along a bathing suit, so a trip to Trenwith's might be in order. These two girls at Moore's Landing are sporting the latest nautical style. Note the puff sleeves and the navel trim, very fashionable. If Trenwith's can't do it for you, then you can go to Hitchcock's, and perhaps a lady's black alpaca suit would be just perfect for you. It's a bargain at $250. So once we're all geared up, we'll meet the Parrotts at Montecito Park, which was a cluster of rental cottages in today's Butterfly Beach area. From there, a convoy will depart from Moore's Ranch. When we get there, the provisions will be carried down in a beach blanket, and the drinks have been carefully placed in a wicker basket to be carried down the steps. Sporting the latest in beachwear, the Parrotts and friends and their friends are real trendsetters. Note the jogfers on the man on the left and the dapper bow ties. The women are properly supported with the latest S corsets and look quite fetching with their Gibson girl hairdos and trimmed sun hats. The man second from the right is Francis Townsend Underhill. He was a transplanted New Yorker who adopted California and Santa Barbara as his home, and he became a rancher, a racetrack owner, an architect, and a dahlia and pig farmer in Montecito. He too married into one of the Spanish families. It's a bit chilly, so a fire is in order, and the beer helps warm things up as well. It's nice to while away the time with a game of solitaire, as you see on the right. These two gentlemen are playing solitaire. I guess they haven't invented beach blanket bingo yet. Sated, a walk is in order, and there are photos to be taken. This view is toward the west, and the cliffs of Moore Ranch are on the right. The land in the background is today's UCSB. A group of friendly chickens is scratching away at the scraps left from the picnic, and this lady finds it quite amusing. The beer has taken effect, and it's time for some beachy tomfoolery. Even the women get in on the act, although she looks sort of hesitant about the whole affair. And then finally the sun has come out and it's time for a swim. The horses have been put away, but that doesn't stop the horseplay as the men draw the carriage onto the pier. Some will go for a walk, others a swim or build sand castles and dig for clams or sand crabs. And this brave lad's trying to summon the courage to dive into the deep blue sea. This is also probably one of the most historic photographs and that gives us information about More Mesa. And I will show you by blowing this up. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so on your left, yes, it's your left. On your left, you will see the warehouse and changing hut and part of the pier. On your right, there is another home that's shown right here. That belonged to the Giordano family, who ran the dairy at More Mesa. The three sons of the Giordano family started their Giordano grocery business in Santa Barbara, but this is where they started. And what I have never been able to figure out in all that I've been reading is how the heck they got down to the pier to begin with. And this photo shows it. Here is the road that slides down. I'm going to go right through his head and to this. And that piece of road looks more like a wooden causeway. You see where it's undermined a bit? And I think it's a wooden causeway that goes from left to right and joins with it takes you to the Giordano house and to the pier. Anyways, by 1913, a silent movie company nicknamed the Flying A has moved to Santa Barbara, and Moore's Rancho is going to be in pictures. The ranch was used for rural and pastoral scenes. This movie, In the Firelight, was a story of Farmer Abner, who adopts two orphans, a girl and a boy. The girl is wooed away when she's 16 by a handsome stranger on a horse. Of course, he's a scoundrel and he mistreats her. Many years later, her brother finally finds her and brings her home to now old Abner, who feels his life is now complete. End of story. Okay, here is another scene in the Moore Ranch area by the stables, and this man right here is Abner, but he's much younger than he is at the end of the melodrama. Okay. The following year, another silent movie was filmed at Moore Ranch. It was called In the Twilight and starred Irving Cummings top, Joseph Harris bottom, names now that we have long forgotten, but they're kind of fun to look at. This particular movie merited a long review in Photography magazine. You can see the indoor scenes as well as the outdoor scene. The female stars of this movie were Charlotte Burton on the left and Vivian Rich on the right. Now, Vivian Rich lived in Santa Barbara in Hope Ranch, and she would buy half of the Flying A studio after they departed Santa Barbara, deserted us for Hollywood. And she formed her own film company, which didn't last very long, but at least she tried. This particular picture of her, this is she, is a colorized photo, and that is probably Moore Ranch in the background. And again, here is one of the rural exteriors on the Moore Ranch. John Finley Moore died in 1919, and his son, John Faxon Moore, closed the ranch. John Saxon Moore began selling off parcels and selling leases to oil companies who had descended on the area and begun exploring for oil. The ad from 1929 shows a subdivision being created called Fairfield, and the wells under construction. General Petroleum has drilled Moore number 1. It blows out due to the tremendous gas pressure, so they tried 2 more times, heading east with Moore number 2 and Moore number 3, and all of them blew out as well. This is the subdivision, and this road, which is called the State Highway, is basically Hollister Avenue today. And back here, this line is the railroad tracks, and the railroad tracks are basically where Highway 101 is today. And you can sort of see that the Moore Ranch right here And this, where it says Bishop, Doheny Bishop, this is UCSB right here. And the slough and the beach, it's all right there on that little tiny map. Okay, the companies tried for a long time to find oil, even building derricks on the beach. Eventually, someone figured out that the gas itself was profitable, and so they stopped looking for black gold, and I believe there are gasworks, that's where the gasworks are for Santa Barbara. This is the photo of the Moore Field from 1929. Notice the creek on the lower left, that's Atascadero Creek. The view is looking east, and the current More Mesa Open Space is, I think, beyond the 2 rows of trees. So row 1, row 2, and I'm pretty sure right here is where the open space is. Despite the advent of the drilling, the Moore Ranch persisted. In 1930, the Moore Ranch provided the horses, drivers, and a wagon for Fiesta Float, which represented a Spanish ranch house. It had music and dance and was quite the hit. John Faxon Moore died in 1933, but the family had leased the ranch to others, starting at least in 1928, and they continued to do so. In 1933, the ranch hosted a rodeo for the Los Vaqueros Club, which hoped to help preserve the pioneer days of Goleta. Besides the more well-known events of a rodeo, this one included wild cow milking and goat roping. It was well promoted, as this enthusiastic little article shows. The following day, the newspaper reported that 4,000 rodeo fans had attended, and a detailed report of the events followed. There was a lot of fun with a game of musical chairs on horseback. I would have loved to have seen that. Also, 10 ropers came back bloodied after the Maverick race when a young steer with a bell around its neck was let loose. The ropers were to chase it and acquire the bell. And I think about that and I think, that's an old-fashioned form of Quidditch, perhaps. Anyways, but I have no photos of the actual event, but the rodeo had bull riders, so I put one on there. And the photo below that is of Rancho San Marcos and a branding activities, which is the same kind of thing that would be happening at that time on Moore Ranch. This is a 1938 aerial photograph that shows a still very agrarian Goleta. There's hardly any development with housing. The open space today, I will attempt to draw a straight line. This is the boundary between Hope Ranch and the open space that you see. Okay, and really, I mean, there's not much. That's 1938. There's not much development as far as housing tracts. And you still see here, this is the Goleta Slough. This is today's Goleta Beach. And you can still see these rows of trees that were in the other photograph. This next picture, which is a little bit later, I think from the early 1940s, again, still shows a lot of agriculture, but I like it because it shows sort of the topography of the Moore Ranch open space today. And again, if you need to see the boundary, this is Hope Ranch. Oops, it doesn't go like that. It's a straight line. It's really hard to do that when you're just swishing around with your finger on a pad, but here we go. Okay, never mind. This is More Mesa in 1966. Again, an aerial view. You can see the surrounding development that has occurred in just 26 years. By then, the mesa has already begun being used by the community as open space and had been for quite a long time. And this is from 1995 and shows, again, increasing density in the area, but that the open space is still there at that time. Of Moore's original ranch, 325 acres remain today. They are a testament to the history of the people and events that shaped this land many years ago. And today, More Mesa supports 5 different habitats that support dozens of species of animal life, many of whose populations are declining. It also provides hiking trails and open space for recreational use, and it is a historic remnant of a Spanish land grant and a pioneer ranch. At the end of last year, the Land Trust for Santa Barbara County helped place 36 of 64 acres of More Mesa owned by the county under a permanent conservation easement. Those involved included Supervisor Laura Capps, Assemblyman Greg Hart, Coalition Vice President Dan Hira, yes. Can I do it all the different ways or just one? What's just fine? Several different versions. Okay. And they were all present for the and Meredith Hendricks of the Land Trust. Anyways, they were all present for the celebration of the easement, which guarantees that this portion will remain open space in perpetuity. The remaining acreage is privately owned, so if you have any questions about the history, I'll be glad to answer them after Dan is going to take over for a little bit here and give us a little more information. And then we will open it up to questions, either to him or to me.
Thanks, you all, for coming. Dan Giroir, Vice President of the More Mesa Preservation Coalition. You know, Hattie disparaged her electronic capabilities, but I'm not going to try to draw little lines on that map. It would be a disaster. I'm just hoping to be able to advance the slideshow. So we really appreciate Hattie's time in the museum agreeing to allow this event to proceed. The More Mesa Preservation Coalition has been around for about 25 years, and we've been dealing with development issues on More Mesa for quite some time. And if I just advance this slideshow up or down, Hattie?
Oh, excuse me. Okay. If you want to advance it, you go this way.
Oh, really nice. Okay, there we have it. I might not fail. So, just want to say this is, of course, many of you might be familiar with the beach at More Mesa. This is a winter shot, a low tide beach, so it's not big and wide and sandy. The first time I wandered onto More Mesa's beach in 1980, I was a undergrad at UCSB, and it was a pretty magical scene, the details of which I will not launch into. There weren't a lot of clothes involved, I should say. But you know, we walked through an avocado orchard and picked avocados and went down to the beach, and it was pretty amazing. The beach at that time, a phenomena that happens, as we all know, our beaches grow and shrink. The beach was 400 feet wide. It was, you had to run across it. It was so hot. And so it was quite the scene. It was filled with hundreds of UCSB students, and several yachts of professors were offshore, which we won't go into. And it was just a magical scene. I was like, I had fled San Diego County, which was growing so rapidly, and to see something like this was just amazing to me. So there's our little symbol on this slide of the white-tailed kite, who you're probably mostly familiar with. So this is the aerial of More Mesa that Hattie had shown previously. A couple of things I just want to point out to you. On the left is the More Mesa Shores neighborhood. On the right is Hope Ranch, and in the north is our neighborhoods in Goleta. And note the Tascadero Creek goes by the northern part of the mesa, so it links the mesa to the foothills. It's a pretty big wildlife corridor, which is an important aspect of More Mesa. A couple of other features. I'm not here to talk about the birds, as Hattie said. I'm here to talk just a little bit about the development threat to More Mesa, but a couple of features here that Wayne Farron could lecture on at some length is, you note the canyon system that comes into the mesa from Atascadero Creek. Those canyons are pretty densely wooded, and they're filled with wetlands, and springs surface in there from faults. And so right now, I think if you walk down across some of these canyons, there's a pretty good flow of water going, and that can last into the summer, especially up in the canyon. So you can imagine how important that is for wildlife. So you get the interfaces of these woodland habitats with the grasslands. It really supports a rich array of wildlife, which is pretty critical for More Mesa. And you can also see the outlines of the trail system, just like you could see from Hattie's historic photos. And we have documentation about public trail use on More Mesa going back 80 years. So the public's been using More Mesa with consent, or at least ignorance by the property owner for a long time, many, many decades. So that's a shot of More Mesa there. Here in the slide, you see some of its most famous residents, the famed white-tailed kite. Here these guys are tussling over an unfortunate rat who's dangling from someone's paws. Actually, it was probably a California vole, as the wildlife biologist in the audience could correct me on. But that's quite the scene. You don't see that all the time. I want to talk just very briefly about development history, because we're not here to talk about that. We're here to celebrate the history. But the community and county have been tussling with each other and tussling with property owners over More Mesa for many, many decades. In the late 1970s, I believe roughly 3,000 units were proposed on More Mesa. That was halted. And it was saved, but it wasn't actually saved because it's still all private property. The development was just halted. And then in 1993, I had the privilege of writing the Goleta Community Plan for the County of Santa Barbara, which we adopted a study by Wayne Farron, who's in the audience tonight, a really complicated biological study, which I think cost $20,000 for 10. Okay, I wanted to give you some credit by saying 20, but it was only 10, and it involved students out there for a year, I think, measuring this and monitoring that. So it was, at that time, for early 1980s, it was a phenomenal study. And the county then, some of us cheeky county planners brought it to the board and got the board to endorse it. And then the board in 1993 said, you know, and this was an interesting thing, because one of my career achievements was getting Mike Stoker, who is a conservative gentleman, to agree with Tom Rogers, who was a liberal gentleman, about reducing the density on More Mesa and restricting development further. You all saw the map outside, I believe. So right now, development was reduced from 3,000 to 300 and then to 70 units on the east end of More Mesa and another 12 on the west end. So that was a huge accomplishment in terms of environmental protection. The policies we wrote are pretty strong, and so I was proud of that. Leading forward for the More Mesa Preservation Coalition in 2012, a consortium of local developers who I know and like came forward and tried to open up more of the Mesa to development, and the policies basically sort of stopped that project. And they meant well, but from their point of view, they're nice people. And then, so the Mesa is sad, and the More Mesa Preservation Coalition has been willing to just rely on the policies to protect it. In 2025, we met with some potential developers from Los Angeles who had made a full price offer to the property owner of $65 million. And we just said, you should do your due diligence. You should look into the policies, you should see what you're going to encounter here. And they quietly rode off into the sunset. So, but we have decided now that it is time to launch a campaign to save More Mesa forever. And the genesis of this campaign is pretty straightforward. And our chief fundraiser, Cameron Benson, is here tonight, and some other board members. We can all talk about this, but as the person who wrote the policies that protect More Mesa, I've been watching the state take back land use authority from local governments in the name of new development, and that's always a trade-off, obviously, right? And so More Mesa hangs by a bit of a thread. The state has effectively gutted the California Environmental Quality Act, one of our foundation laws, and now they're looking at the State Coastal Act. And the only reason that More Mesa is designated really as open space and protected currently is the State Coastal Act and the policies within it. So if the state changes the State Coastal Act, which can happen overnight, that the California Environmental Quality Act was gutted as part of the budget with no hearings. No one even really knew about it. So it could be a problem. So I think the More Mesa Preservation Coalition is not willing to risk More Mesa, that we can still continue to do the typical environmental thing, fight, 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 sue, sue, sue. We don't want to do that. We want to work with the property owner in a cooperative manner and raise the money to buy More Mesa, to put this issue to bed, because it's such a treasure to the community. As Hattie said, I won't draw the red lines again, but you know, we have here, this photo here, you see the young lady on a bike. That's a short-eared owl flying by. I don't know where else you can see short-eared owls, and I won't go into all the wildlife you can see in all the trails. More Mesa, we all think, I know, is a great resource, but we're concerned that we could lose More Mesa quickly. We've had one great victory, the 35 acres. We now are been instructed by some foundations we've talked to and sort of key donors that the public needs to know More Mesa is not a preserve. Because if you talk to people on More Mesa, you're hiking, they'll go, well, what are you talking about? It's a preserve. I'm like, no, it's not a preserve. So if we want to keep More Mesa, we think we need to move quickly to acquire it. So the More Mesa Preservation Coalition has been instructed, basically, to do a number of public events to raise public awareness about More Mesa. And so we have this event, we've had stuff earlier in the late last year. We'll be doing the Double Wide Kings concert, which we hope you all can attend at the Libero Theater. We have some talks. The first one's on trails at the Faulkner Gallery, and then we have the Oak Group Art Show, which will kick off. They're painting out there right now. And so we'll have a major art show at the Faulkner Gallery, and there'll be a bunch of other events that won't bore you with right now. But we have a list of them. I think, do we have that here?
It's on our website.
Okay, it's on our website. So I urge you all to take a look at that. We're not asking for donations to purchase More Mesa right now. We're not ready yet. But we will be in the late spring, and that's when we're going to try and launch our capital campaign. Right now, we're hoping to get donations for operations because it's amazing how much a capital campaign costs and doing all this stuff costs. But so we're doing well. We're raising money and we're reaching the community. We've gotten a lot of good press, and we need to keep that up. And these talks here are part of that effort. And so you can talk to any board members here. I'm available for questions. We have our staff out at the table out there. And we really appreciate you all coming. Let me see, do I have another slide? I do, yeah. I'll draw a circle around my name. I won't do that. So you see here, there's our contact information. We have cards people can take home if you're interested in following this. And there's two ways really to participate. One is just to sign up to receive email notices. And I think our supporters on the More Mesa Preservation Coalition we haven't seen this many emails in a long time because the coalition's been waiting and just sitting back and waiting for development. I don't think we can wait anymore because if we get behind the curve, it will be out of our reach to purchase More Mesa. Right now, I think we can establish a friendly relationship with the property owner and raise the money from local, state, and federal sources, and that's our goal. And that'll kick off probably April, May, June for the capital campaign. We believe we can do it. We hope we can do it. So I wanted to thank you all for coming. Thank Hattie and the museum because this is a great venue.